Greetings and welcome to the latest edition of the Entheogenic Evolution podcast. As always, I'm your host, Martin. I'm happy to have you with me today. For this week's episode, I have a conversation with Christian Rasmussen, who joined me from all the way over in Minnesota, where he runs what was formerly called Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals, but has recently undergone a name change to Amentara. And we discuss various psychedelic adjacent ethnobotanicals such as Amanita muscaria mushrooms, blue lotus, kanna, and a few other products that they offer over there at Amentara. I was about to call them Minnesota Nice. And also, thanks to Christian for sending me a few samples in the mail. I've been enjoying experimenting with those a little bit. We'll get to that in just a moment, but of course, we have a few announcements first. Let's see, the big announcement, which I mentioned just the other week, is that my brand new 5-MeO-DMT glossary is now out and available to the public. It is a collection of terms, phrases, and concepts that are associated with use of 5-MeO-DMT and facilitation. And I put it together for my students at the Mindscape Psychedelic Institute, where I teach in the facilitation course and also the integration specialist training course, and decided it'd be good to make it available to the general public. So it's out there as a full color paperback, which of course makes it a little bit more expensive because it's printed in full color. It's not a very long book. It's about 65 pages long. But it's out there in a full color paperback with some cool art and images, also as a Kindle ebook edition and as an audiobook if you feel like listening to it. You know, it's a few hours long. It's available over there at Audible and Amazon and the Apple bookstore. So that is now out. It's available. My print copies just arrived a couple days ago, and I'll say, it looks great. It's pretty. Make a nice gift for someone in your world who's into 5-MeO. Who knows? Also, as I mentioned last week, I have uploaded a number of very old episodes from the Entheogenic Evolution podcast to the Entheogenic Evolution archive that is exclusively available over at my Patreon page, patreon.com/MartinWBall. And that is available for any patrons who join up at the $20 a month and up level. And these are some old episodes from 2008, 2009, 2010. I've got some interviews with James Orrock of Tryptamine Palace, Rick Doblin, Rick Strassman, Roland Griffiths from Johns Hopkins University. Just a lot of old classic episodes of mine from way back when I started this podcast almost 18 years ago. And that's there along with hundreds of other podcast episodes, lots of the talks that I organized here in Ashland, Oregon for the free Exploring Psychedelics conference that I held for a number of years here, and all kinds of interviews and just lots of stuff you're not going to find anywhere else. Of course, there's no obligation over at Patreon. There's everything from $1 a month up to $100 a month. You can change your support level at any time. You can cancel. You can come and go, and you can also sign up for free. But if you like this podcast and the work that I've been doing here for the past 18 years, and would like to support that with a little financial giving, well, stop by Patreon. It's a great way to do it, and I always appreciate that. And of course, a big thanks to everyone who has ever supported me at Patreon, or who is there now, or who intends to be there in the future. Speaking of 5-MeO, as I've been mentioning over the past couple of weeks, we do have an upcoming women's retreat that is being hosted by Piazza Nako Sif, who's been featured here on the Entheogenic Evolution podcast. I'm just going to quickly read what she has provided to me. This is for women survivors of sexual trauma. To the parts of you that long to be seen beyond your story of survival, in the sacred valley of Tepoztlan, we've woven an intimate circle where emotional, relational, and spiritual wounds are met with tenderness and reverence. Guided by Dr. Holly, Victoria, and Piazza, you'll journey through somatic therapies, voice and choice practices, embodied movement, and the luminous medicine of 5-MeO-DMT to access the depths of your true self. From February 24th to March 1st, 2026, this retreat offers 2 weeks of conscious preparation, 6 days of communal ceremony among women survivors, and 4 weeks of personalized integration support. Here you are never alone. This circle is your sanctuary to reclaim your power and your bridge to a new narrative of dignity and fullness. If you're feeling the call to heal beyond words, your place is waiting. You can learn more at www.evolutionaryactivation.com. And hey, of course, speaking of integration, if you need help integrating your entheogenic experience from a non-dual and energetic perspective, I am here to help. I specialize in 5-MeO-DMT, but I'm not limited to that in any way, shape, or form. You can stop by at non-dualentheogenicintegration.com or just martinball.net if you want more info, or just shoot me an email at martinwball@gmail.com. And just to let you know, I'm only around for the next 2 weeks and then taking off for family holiday travels. I will be out the rest of the month, but I still have time in my schedule. If you'd like to get on in that schedule in the next couple of weeks, I'm happy to make time for you. And one last thing. Yes, as I've been sharing here in the podcast, my new album, Solar Return, is now out there and available at all online music outlets under the name of Martin Ball. There's no W with my music. And as I've mentioned before, I'm kind of astounded at how well this is currently doing on Spotify, that this particular album of mine, for whatever reason, has just got more attention than anything else I've ever released and produced over on Spotify, and it has boosted my numbers up beyond anything I've ever seen before. So that's really cool. I'm excited about that. I'm really happy with the album. I think it's just a great collection of songs. But just a reminder, if you want to check it out, it is out there wherever you stream digital music, along with my many, many, many other albums. There's a lot of them. And I'll put in one of the new tracks from the new album at the end of the interview with Christian. Okay, I think that's all the announcements for today. Let's go ahead and get into that conversation with Christian Rasmussen. Here in the interview, we discuss the business as Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals, but again, it has changed the name to Amentara. That's AMENTARA.com, and there'll be a link in the podcast notes as well. Hope you enjoy. Be back next week with more from the audiobook of The Alchemist and the Eagle, and more exciting things to round out the year 2025 here on the podcast. And come January 1st, 2026, the entheogenic evolution comes of age. It will be officially 18 years old. Yes, I've been doing this for 18 years. Thanks for being with me. Hope you've enjoyed this time. Okay, here's my conversation with Christian. All right, well, I am happy to welcome on to the Entheogenic Evolution podcast today, Christian Rasmussen. And I think we're going to be talking about some Amanita today, and perhaps some other things as well. And according to the bio that I received for Christian, that he helped overcome a benzodiazepine addiction with Amanita. Amanita has not been talked about a whole lot here on the podcast. I have done a few interviews about it. So it's an under-talked about subject. But I just want to welcome you onto the podcast, Christian, and let you introduce yourself.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. So I own and operate MN Nice Ethnobotanicals, which is we were the first to start selling Amanita here to scale in the States. There were a handful of foragers that would sell their supply, on Etsy and stuff or eBay, but nobody had really built a business model around it and scaled it up. And that was done in 2020, so it wasn't that long ago at this point. But it all came to fruition because I was getting off of benzodiazepines, as you mentioned. And I was a poly drug addict in my 20s. I was a heroin addict. I was addicted to benzos, et cetera, et cetera. And, I kicked opiates, and then it was time to kick benzos, which I had heard were some of the worst things in the world to come off of, or potentially the worst drug in the world to come off of. And I was like, yeah, okay. I kicked heroin, cool. And yeah, I had no idea what I was getting into, though. It was just absolutely awful. And it lasted. Well, it was basically a year of living in a panic attack, times 100 essentially, and no sleep, and your body's on fire, et cetera, et cetera. Really, really awful. And it was a year in, and I was maybe 5-10% healed, it felt like. So I was looking at 7 years of this, 8 years, which is a common story in benzo withdrawal, unfortunately. And it's actually not withdrawal; it's brain damage that one's dealing with at that point. It's a damaged GABA system and glutamate system that takes a long time to rebalance itself and heal itself naturally. And it was a year to the day after I got off benzos, and I was contemplating taking my life. My life was in shambles, and I was just suffering so greatly. And I was on this hike And I was thinking about all this stuff on the hike and like, what my next move was going to be in essence. And I saw these mushrooms growing. They're beautiful. They're the Gusoi variety, which is what we get in Minnesota, which is the orange cap with white dots instead of the red cap that everybody's familiar with. But yeah, beautiful, stunning, magical. And there was this magnetism towards them and I kind of liken it to like when you meet somebody who's going to become your future partner or your future best friend or whatever, there's this like pull. You can feel it. It's palpable. It's tangible. And I had that with these mushrooms to an extent that I had never felt before. And it was in a sense, they almost like, not in English or anything, but they almost spoke to me and they essentially told me like, we have something for you. And in return, you're going to do something for us. I was like, okay, I picked them and I went to the house and I did a bunch of research and there was nothing positive about them online at all. And I knew about the mushrooms. Like, I knew what Amanita was. Like, I'd read a bunch of experience reports of people eating like what I know now to be massive heroic doses and having a really awful time. Well, yeah, if you're a teenager and you want to drink alcohol for the first time and you down a fifth of vodka, like that's going to be a pretty bad experience, know? But there was one woman online who claimed that she utilized them to heal her brain from benzoyl, and she broke down the pharmacology of it, which I then went and did a bunch of research, and indeed it hits the GABA system and the glutamate system. It hits the GABA system in a way that is non-addictive. Like any GABAergic substance, you think alcohol, you think benzodiazepines, barbiturates, they have the only withdrawal in the world that could kill somebody. And they're massively, massively addicting. Where Amanita hits that same system, but it seems to heal the receptors instead of damage them. So I was like at the end of my ropes. I was ready to call it quits. So I was like, screw it, I'm going to give it a shot. And I microdosed for 2 weeks and took a couple larger doses, medium doses, I guess, in there. In that span of 2 weeks. And by the end of that 2 weeks, it felt to me like I was like 80% healed. And I wasn't just healed, while I was utilizing the mushrooms. Like when I had stopped using them, I was still significantly better than when I started, which was, miraculous to me. And it was as if I had been drowning for, a year and finally I could breathe again. So yeah, one thing led to another. And I actually ended up being asked to start selling Amanita in the States. So it wasn't my like goal or intention. I didn't set out to do it. Like somebody asked me to do it in this little community that was growing around Amanita because I'm an entrepreneur. And yeah, one thing led to another. And now we're the largest Amanita retailers likely in the world, definitely in North America.
Yeah. So in starting your exploration with Amanita, as you were first learning about it, did you come up against this is a poisonous mushroom? I mean, you mentioned like reading trip reports, and I know like especially people, if they're eating like the raw mushroom, you're going to have, I think it's the ibotenic acid in there, which you really don't want. You really should be using dried Amanita. Did you come up against sort of these ideas that it's poisonous or that it's bad?
Sure.
Or did you just enter in with the information like, actually, no, I think that's kind of a myth, especially if we dry it. So what was your appreciation of it in first encountering it?
Yeah, we get that all the time. And that was definitely I mean, the woman that I like first found initially, she broke this all down quite a lot, and I've broken it down extensively as well. And so like we're up against this concern very, very frequently, and it's really it's a misfounded concern, and it's really too bad. So like there's the study from, I don't remember when it was done, maybe the 90s, where they took isolated synthetic ibotenic acid and injected it directly into rats' brains in copious amounts. We're talking what would take like 100 kilos worth, like directly into a rat's brain. And they're like, oh, look, it creates brain lesions. It's neurotoxic. It's like, well, wait a second, like that's not how you do studies. Like that doesn't make any sense. And there's other data out there that shows very clearly that in the amount that one would be consuming ibotenic acid, it's not neurotoxic at all. There are no concerns about that. So a lot of the like poison concerns come from the nausea and the stomach upset that can happen, and like people can get really sick. And you mentioned like if they're raw to the ground and you eat the mushroom, Like there's a high concentration of ibotenic acid in there and a very low concentration of muscimol. And ibotenic acid decarboxylates or converts into muscimol via drying, via heat, via acidity. So when you dry the mushrooms out, the ibotenic acid lessens and the muscimol rises, and that creates less of digestive issues or gut issues. Ibotenic acid also has different pharmacological effects. It's a NMDA agonist, so it works somewhat similarly, kind of oppositionally to something like ketamine. So high ibotenic acid dose experiences like generally aren't that pleasant. But also high ibotenic acid can make people really sick, which is probably a lot of where the myth that it's poisonous and toxic comes from. But then with drying and then with further preparation, if one wants, like it's generally a really, really palatable, enjoyable experience for just about everybody. Of course, dose dependent, like can't go take 15, 20 grams on your first time. Like that's a very large dose and will elicit a very intense experience.
So prior to this encounter with the mushrooms out in the forest, had you been involved in the world of psychedelic plant medicines? I mean, you said that you were a polydrug user, but did that include like psychedelics or just some of these other ones that are more destructive for your health?
Yeah, for sure. I've had a strong relationship with psychedelics my entire life. That faltered when in the midst of like heroin addiction, but like as a teenager and in my early 20s, it was a really, really big part of my life. And it's really always been a big part of my life. So, and that again, like I'd always known what Amanita was, like, cause I studied when I was a teenager, like I would spend my nights, my evenings on Arrowhead, which was like a big database of all the different plant medicines or drugs out there, people's experience reports and pharmacology, et cetera, et cetera. So I knew about essentially everything. And I'd like to try basically everything throughout my 20s. But yeah, Amanita never crossed my radar until that day.
So you mentioned that this was a golden version of Amanita. I'm just curious. So I'm going to do the thing that I always tell people not to do, but I'm just doing this for you. I'm going to hold up a picture. And this is actually this is the cover of the podcast episode that is out just from earlier today. But I was recently in North Georgia in the Blue Ridge Mountains and found a golden Amanita. So this is the picture.
Yeah, that looks... It's hard. The color isn't coming through too well. It looks like it could be a Gasoa. It could be a different species of Amanita as well. But yeah, the Gasoa is really orange, much oranger. I don't know if that's orange or gold. It was hard to tell from the picture.
Yeah, this one is really gold looking. I'd never seen one quite this color. And it was conveniently positioned like by this creek. And so the light was kind of coming off of the creek and creating this nice bokeh with the blurred light in the background. It just had this lovely gold color. So I did a little photo shoot with the mushroom. But yeah, it's in terms of Amanita, for me, not knowing a whole lot about Amanita, like I wouldn't pick it because I don't know what kind of Amanita it is or what kind of effects it might or might not have.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that could be a psychoactive Amanita and it could not be. There's tons of Amanita and the most deadly mushrooms in the world are Amanita species. The death cap and the destroying angel, like deadliest mushrooms in the world. So, but that being said, Muscaria, the red mushroom with white dots, that's super easy to identify. Like you generally can't go wrong with that. But once you venture out of that, there's a little bit of knowledge to have for sure.
Yeah. And we don't have the red and white Amanitas down here in Southern Oregon. But once you hit about mid-Oregon, then up through Washington and Canada, then fairly easy to find those species. So in working with the Amanita, I'm very curious to hear what you would want to share about what the experience was like in terms of, because oftentimes people think, okay, mushrooms... Well, I don't want to speak for people in general, but people think, okay, mushrooms has a certain kind of psychedelic experience, but Amanita is completely, totally different. It's not at all like psilocybin mushrooms. Yes, it's a mushroom, but it's a totally different world. So how would you characterize some of those earlier experiences for you. And so since you said that you had already had experience with psychedelics, I would assume that that would have included psilocybin mushrooms.
Of course.
Yeah. So did you go any thoughts in, I mean, I know you're reading the trip report, so you probably have an idea like this is quite different, but I'm curious about sort of those first impressions that you had.
Yeah, well, and so I'm a unique case because I was living in like a panic attack times 100. So like any minute relief was going to be tremendous to me, you know. But so like I initially took a micro dose, like a nano dose, something like 50 milligrams or something like that. Which a traditional microdose is like 300 and 500 milligrams, maybe up to a gram. So like a tenth of a microdose, basically. And immediately, or like essentially immediately, I felt this energetic load lift. So it wasn't it wasn't necessarily a physical sensation. It's kind of hard to put into words, but I felt something lift, and I started getting, a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more sociable. And I had this like crazy experience with my sister on the phone where she had just gotten this box of lizards or this box of grapes in from California. She was working at a vineyard in Minnesota, and there were lizards in the box. And so she took one and brought it home and made a little habitat for it. And then she was telling me the story. I just blurted out, Frank. She was like, "Yeah, how did you know I named the lizard Frank?" And so that was an interesting, little psychic download that happened, which actually comes into play a little bit later as we've started to really uncover this concept that Amanita can potentially increase intuitive faculties and psychic faculties in people by quite a lot, which is a pretty incredible thing to witness and be a witness to. But as I started experimenting with it more, it was just massive relief, and it brought me back into myself. So it was hard to really gauge as much the effects of the mushroom as it for me, like the effects that it would have on a normal person for me, because I was like suffering so bad, and all of a sudden it was relieved, but then as I experimented with it later and later on and started taking larger doses, I started really getting an idea of what the mushroom was capable of and what the effects were like. And as you mentioned, completely different than psilocybin. It's not even in the same ball field, except for the fact that it's a mushroom. It hits completely different receptor sites. So ibotenic acid, as we mentioned earlier, hits the glutamate system, same receptor system that ketamine hits. Muscimol, which ibotenic acid converts into, hits the GABA system. GABA is what alcohol hits. It's what benzodiazepines hit. So that's our inhibitory system. So it relaxes one. It lowers inhibitions. It decreases stress. It decreases anxiety, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it also hits the cholinergic system, which is what all of the smart drugs and nootropics out there hit. So help with memory recall, verbal fluency, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people view it as nature's top nootropic. So people will take it for a variety of reasons, whether it be anxiety or sleep or depression or business. A lot of people take it for business or creativity. But really where it really shines, and like it's a pleasant experience, it's relaxing, it lifts the mood, you're more bubbly. It's the Santa Claus mushroom, right? So we get jollier. But where it really, really, really shines is its ability to help one transform their personality structure. So like we have, we all have these little loops that we've got stuck in, or reactions that we have to various situations or people or individuals or whatever. And Amanita seems to really gently nudge us towards the higher path and the path that's most in line with who we are and our higher selves. And it also seems to really, help. There's a strong neuroplasticity aspect to it. So let's just say somebody has anger issues, and they, get in a situation where they would generally get a strong reaction immediately. With Amanita, it seems that there's space in between that reaction and those thoughts. Not only is there space, and the space allows you to make a different decision, it's also really gently nudging you into the direction of making that better decision. Then you make that better decision, and all of a sudden, boom, you have new neural pathways firing. The neuroplasticity kicks that up into high gear. So the next time a situation like that comes around, you're much more primed to be able to choose that higher path. And you think about that with anger, but think about that with any situation in your life. So with that, it seems to, and the fact that that people generally take it like more consistently, something like psilocybin, if you're taking a large dose, you can do it once every couple of weeks. Generally, people don't do it more than a few times a year, if that. Microdosing you can do once every 3 days, or whatever the protocol is. Amanita is generally best used when it's taken daily, so it's taken consistently. So you have something that's in your system that you're building resonance with, that is gently nudging you towards the higher path consistently, all the while creating new neuronal networks. Like, you can just imagine how people's lives can transform over time, and that's where Amanita really shines.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it had a big impact for you. I'd love to share just a little bit of my story with Amanita with you, if you're curious.
Please. Yeah.
So, actually, it's somewhat related to your own story, so the background is I've had difficulty sleeping my entire life, going back to infancy and childhood. And then in 2018, I had a friend who actually was leaving the country, and he was getting rid of a bunch of stuff before he left. And he had a big bottle of Valium. And he knew that I had a lot of trouble sleeping. And so he gave me this big bottle of Valium. He's like, hey, try this. I take this for sleep. I think you'll like it. Now, at the time, I did not do my homework. I did not know about benzodiazepine addiction and the difficulties with all of that. But he gave me this big bottle of Valium. And so one night I took a Valium and I popped it, and I was asleep within 15 minutes. And this is the kind of thing I might naturally fall asleep within 15 minutes, like maybe once or twice a year at best. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I started using it, and then I started overusing it. And as my tolerance was building up, I was using more of it. And meanwhile, my sleep was degrading over the course of the year. So again, this was back in 2018. And I think a lot of it was due to the fact that I was overusing benzodiazepines, and then I was getting rebound insomnia. So then in the beginning of 2019, by the time we reached that point, my ability to sleep completely evaporated, and I went 10 consecutive days without being able to sleep. And it's a complex situation, but all the doctors treated it as though it was an anxiety disorder, which it's not. It's a functional disorder. And so then they gave me more benzodiazepine. So what was it, like Ativan or something like that? And so then I was taking Ativan, and it was not helping me sleep at all. So then one day I decided, I'm not going to take the Ativan. And by that afternoon, I was having shivers, cramps, diarrhea. I felt like I was dying. I called the doctor, and he's like, oh, you haven't taken your Ativan? Like, you need to take that right away, because as you've shared, withdrawal from benzodiazepines can actually kill you. So I'm learning all this like a bit late, like, okay, I should have done this research before. But anyway, I ended up getting off the Ativan, and that was difficult, very, very unpleasant. And so I still live with this sleep disorder today. And then a few years ago, it's been improving, and I learned how to work with it more. Things still really go up and down in terms of how I sleep any given night. But anyway, a few years ago, because my social media algorithms are all set to like, this guy's got a sleep problem, what popped up on my screen was this psyched wellness product called Calm, which is an Amanita extract. So I ended up ordering that. And then actually a couple of weeks after I had gotten it, I was contacted by the company asking if I wanted to do an interview for the podcast. I was like, okay, great. So brought them on, and we had an interview. That's a few years ago now. But I've been using the Amanita ever since then. And initially I was using it every night, and now it's like my backup go-to. So for me, I use it for sleep. And what I like to share with people is that like anything else I take, it doesn't put me to sleep. Like, nothing really like puts me to sleep. But what I really love about the Amanita is if I've been in bed for a couple of hours and I notice like, okay, I'm not getting to sleep and like no sleepy feelings are arising, what I'll do is I'll go and take the Amanita tincture, and you hold it under your tongue. And then about 20 minutes later, I get nice, super comfortable sleepy feelings. And that's usually enough to shift me into then being able to sleep. Like I said, it doesn't put me to sleep, but it gives me those sensations that, again, ever since I was a little kid, I don't naturally have sleepy sensations. It doesn't happen for me. And so to have that as something in my toolkit for sleep, I mean, I've really appreciated having it, and I'm really glad that Amanita came into my life that way. And it's a very pleasant sensation, and it's not long lasting, but it's just that it's enough sometimes just like, okay, the body's relaxing. I can really feel that shift in gears.
Yeah.
And it's so pleasant. So I really like it for that.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Sorry, I had to go through the benzo ordeal. It's really, really not fun. Yeah, I sympathize a lot. Not fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, Amanita is amazing, man. I'm glad that you came across it. Yeah, I know Psych Wellness, of course. Know all those guys, and yeah, Calm is a fun product for sure.
Yeah. So in terms of what kind of products you're offering with Amanita, like, sorry, I haven't seen a list. Like, what do you have? Like you mentioned, like sort of for all these different purposes. But what kind of products are you yourself making available for people?
Yeah, so we're the most known for just the raw caps. We just sell the raw caps that people can consume in tea, or some people eat them raw. They're dried, of course. But then also we have Regalis as well. So Amanita Regalis is a different species of Amanita that is roughly 3 times more potent than Amanita muscaria. And then we have Amanita pantherina as well, which is roughly 5 times more potent than muscaria. And then we have capsules of all these varieties. We have gummies, we have chocolate bars, tinctures, et cetera, really any delivery method you can imagine. And then we also carry a host of other products. So we have Kana, we have Kava, we have Blue Lotus, we have Silene capensis, which is an African dream rat. Like we have a pretty extensive list. I think we probably have 25 different plants that we carry, all with really, really unique benefits and pharmacological activity. But Amanita is really our bread and butter. Like that's what we focus on the most.
Yeah. So how did you make that shift from using it for yourself to deciding that, hey, I am an entrepreneur, I'm going to make a business out of this?
Yeah. So I had a CBD company. So when I this is really overambitious of me. I'm so glad that I did it, but man, in those early days, it was brutal. As I got off benzos, or like right before I got off, I decided I'm going to start a business like while I'm getting off benzos, because it'll give me something to do. So me and my friends started what was just going to be a local CBD cannabis company in Minnesota, and we built it up. And man, yeah, like going through the peak of benzo withdrawal, trying to like design a website or like call people and deal with intense situations was really helpful. Like I would be trying to design something, and like every 5 minutes I'd have to take like a panic attack break, and go sit down somewhere and gather myself and go back to it. But anyway, so we had this little business going, and I mentioned the woman. So the woman that I found when I found the mushrooms is Amanita Dreamer. I don't know if you're familiar with her at all.
No.
She had just like started her YouTube channel at this point in time, and was like I mentioned, she had utilized Amanita to get off of benzodiazepines. And so after finding her videos and like learning about it, and then trying it myself, and like going through this miraculous healing, I reached out to her and offered to sponsor one of her videos from my CBD company, my cannabis company. And I wrote her like a 3-page letter, and she was she responded really well, and we sponsored a video, and we became friends. And so she had this little community growing around Amanita, and it was like 6-7 months after that she was like, we need a US supplier. Like nobody supplies these things in the US. Can you do it? And I was like, sure, yeah, why not? Like I already had the company. And so we started that. I think it was in June of 21. And yeah, it took off super quick, and we shifted gears away from CBD and cannabis and entirely into Amanita. And then it expanded to, I always really loved Blue Lotus as like in my early 20s. And so like I found a Blue Lotus extract that was great and brought that on. And I have all these things that I've tried throughout my life that I really like. So I just had this list, and it's like, okay, once I find a supplier for all these, and we ended up pulling that off over the years. And yeah, now we have this big extensive list.
Yeah, so I'm actually just trying to open the website here so I can take a look at what's on your list. Sorry, I didn't have that open earlier. Um, but in terms of supply of Amanita, I'm curious, are you guys going out and harvesting them? And then you mentioned like these different varieties. Do they come from different areas of the world? And um, has there been any impact with supply chain with kind of all the stuff that's going on with international trade and tariffs right now? Or how does that work
Yes.
for you guys?
Yes, yes, and yes. So Amanita is mycorrhizal, which means it grows in symbiosis with tree roots. So like it needs a host tree to grow, so you can't farm it, and that's a good point for people to understand. So like one of the real big benefits of that is like big commercial interests can't come in and like dominate the industry and start farming it at scale at really really cheap dollar amounts. It has to be wild forage. So we there's no way I could get a team together that could forage anywhere near as enough amanita for us. So we import from all over the world. I work with 30, 40 different individuals or brokers or family units. The families are fun because it's like mom, dad, kids, uncles, aunts, and they all go out in the fall and harvest amanita and they'll dry it and then they'll sell it to us throughout the year and they make more money than they would be able to make, in their respective country if they all had jobs. So that's a fun one. It's fun to be able to support people all over the world and get mushrooms from all over the world as well. But yeah, so like the big two countries that they come from are actually Russia and Ukraine. So you can imagine the implicit difficulties,
Yeah.
from getting mushrooms from there, particularly at the beginning of the war and everything. And it was tricky. The entire industry had to figure a bunch of stuff out. But now, unfortunately, the tariffs, like basically all of Europe has halted shipments to the U.S. So we've been having to route packages through like Armenia and Dubai and blah blah blah. It's been a little messy and it's gotten like it makes everything a little bit more expensive. It delays everything quite a lot. But yeah, so there are issues, but there are always ways around these issues, But it's a fun aspect of trying to figure this out.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys go through a lot of mushrooms.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Um, well, maybe let's talk about some of the other products that you've got going here. Blue Lotus, that's something that I've heard about over the years. I myself have no familiarity with Blue Lotus. There is a woman who used to live here in Ashland, and she was very interested in the connection between lotus and ancient Egyptian traditions. But what can you tell us about Blue Lotus and how that fits into the ethnobotanical pharmacopoeia that you've got going here?
Yeah. Blue Lotus is cool. You mentioned the Egyptian connection. So the ancient Egyptians, most revered plant medicine was Blue Lotus, or at least it appears to be Blue Lotus based on, the papyrus and whatnot. And when they opened up King Tut's sarcophagus, his mummy was covered in Blue Lotus petals. And Blue Lotus is what we'll call an empathogen. So it's a heart opening. So something like MDMA is like an empathogen. It opens the heart. It increases empathy. And it's relatively subtle in a sense. It's not always subtle, but it's relatively subtle generally. And it's similarly to Amanita. It's relaxing, but in its own way, it's a little bit different. It generally has like a really slight, subtle body euphoria, body sensation to it. Not everybody will notice that, but a lot of people do. It's really, really great for things like meditation, any spiritual work, like because it seems to really calm the waters of the mind. So like if one's in meditation, they can go significantly deeper. Their thoughts aren't roaming like they would be otherwise. It's really great for dream work as well. It tends to increase one's dreaming capacity. Things like astral projection, and then a lot in the spiritual community, a lot of people say that, and then there's a lot of conjecture that one of the reasons that the Egyptians utilized it because it increases the magnetism of one's intention. So like if they're going into ritual, for instance, and the ritual has like a designated intention, like they're doing the ritual to achieve a means to an end, the Blue Lotus will increase that intention and then pull in that intention better. And that's from my own personal experience, that seems to be pretty consistent. It seems to be pretty consistent with a lot of people's experience that are utilizing it. But then on a more practical level, it's also great for something like anxiety, but it's also just it's a pleasant experience. It's something pleasant to play around with. Yeah, Blue Lotus is cool. It's a fun one. Blue Lotus would be our second highest selling product after Amanita.
Yeah. So in developing these products, like how did you go about deciding like what was going to be within the pharmacopoeia here? I mean, I would say what stands out obviously is that these are legal, right? These are
Yes.
not in the realm of illegal psychedelic or plant substances, but legal. But yeah, like something like Blue Lotus, it's generally gone under the radar. It's not really well known, and even Amanita, again, many people recognize the mushroom because we all
Yeah.
know the mushroom. I mean, it's so such classic iconography of the red and white mushroom. Everybody
Yeah.
knows the mushroom, but actually having experience with it, still relatively rare. Though I think interest has been growing around Amanita around the
Yeah.
world. And I think a lot of it is for exactly the reasons that you say, that it does produce these rather pleasant experiences. And I think that they probably could work really well as an alternative to benzodiazepines with folks. I mean, it's something that, I do integration work with clients who, primarily people working with 5-MeO DMT. And then some people have been talking about how they want to get off benzodiazepines or they're having a difficult time with reactivations afterwards. And sometimes it's disrupting their sleep. And so it is something that I tend to bring out with some of my clients to say, hey, well, have you tried Amanita? This could
Yeah.
really help you. But were you going for plants that have a pleasant experience, or were you just trying to look for ones that are more accessible? Or, yeah, again, going back to the question of how did you come up with your pharmacopoeia here?
It's really all stuff that I've played around with and built somewhat of a resonance with over the years. So like um yeah, yeah. I mean that's really what it comes down to. Now that said, there are certain things that I will absolutely never carry. Something like kratom, for instance. Like I'm not going to carry kratom. I understand the benefit to it. I understand where it can help a lot of people. I also know that it's very addictive, and I know that from personal experience as well. And like it's just not something that I'm going to put out into the world, knowing that it could harm some people. Things like Datura, like a lot of other shops like this might sell Datura, and like Datura can be massively dangerous. It's a
Yeah.
strong deliriant. So there are a handful of things that like I just refuse to touch. But really, like I had this big list that I put together, like I mentioned earlier, and like it was all stuff that I built a resonance with. And yeah, most everything is like a pleasant experience, or it has there's like the dream herbs, for instance, like Silene capensis. You eat a little bit of the root in the morning every day, and then each day your dreams will get progressively more and more intense. Like it doesn't really elicit an experience during the day, but I guess the dreams are an experience for sure. But yeah, really nothing that we carry is going to elicit a negative experience. Although, something like if somebody decides to drink 20 grams of Amanita tea and doesn't know what they're getting into, like that might not be a fun experience. It's like start low and start slow. Like we don't need to be taking heroic doses of anything. But yeah, it was just like this big list that I put together. And then I was always on the hunt for new suppliers and trying to figure out, where to get these different products from. And I have a list somewhere with a few products that I haven't been able to get still. And I've actually taken a step back from bringing any new products in just because it's expensive and time consuming. And we have a pretty extensive list as of now. But yeah, it's just all products that I played around with and built somewhat of a relationship with over the years.
Yeah. Going back to the Blue Lotus, should have asked you, what is the pharmacological properties? What is that working on?
Yeah.
What can you share about
So,
that?
so Blue Lotus has two compounds in it. One is apomorphine, and not to be confused with morphine. It doesn't have any opioid activity. And the other is nuciferine. They're actually really fascinating. Nuciferine, in particular, as it works on basically every receptor system that you can think of. Like it hits serotonin, it hits dopamine, it hits norepinephrine, it hits GABA, I don't think it hits the opioid system at all, but it hits a lot of different systems. It's a D2 dopamine receptor 2 antagonist. So it like decreases dopamine receptor 2, which brings, you'd think decreasing dopamine would like lower happiness, but I think D2 means it produces like a very unique relaxation, probably with all the other, pharmacological activity going on with nuciferine. Apomorphine is used, I think it's used as an anticonvulsant. Um, might be incorrect there, but the nuciferine seems to be the bulk of the experience, although they both work synergistically with one another. But yeah, it has a really unique like profile of pharmacological activity for sure.
And what part of the blue lotus plant are these compounds coming from? Is it the leaves? It's the flower
It's a
petals? What part?
Yeah, it's the flower petals. Yeah, the flowers, and we generally get them in whole flowers. So it'll have the petals, it'll have the base of the flower, and then it'll have the stamens, the little yellow things that stick
Hmm.
out from the middle, and those are said to have the highest concentration of the actives in them. But yeah, the flower petals, and then most people will take. So I mentioned apomorphine and nuciferine. One of those, I think it's apomorphine is water soluble and nuciferine is ethanol soluble. So when you make a tea out of the blue lotus petals, you're only getting half of the compounds in it because there's no ethanol for the nuciferine to be soluble in. So brewing a tea like will have an effect, but it's not going to have the full effect. That's why the Egyptians would brew it in wine. So they'd mix blue lotus in a jar of wine and seal it for a couple of days and then drink that because you get the ethanol extraction and the water extraction. So you get the full alkaloids. Um, an easy way around. So some people smoke blue lotus, and that obviously you get both of the alkaloids doing that. Some people will eat the flowers themselves. You have like the lotus eaters and Homer's Odyssey,
Yeah.
um, and uh, and then the extract is also a really easy way around that. It's a water and ethanol extract, so you get all the compounds in it, and then we infuse that into gummies or into capsules, and so that's an easy way to bypass the needing to do an ethanol extraction at home.
Hmm. So then it sounds like you are offering, I'm just going to click on the Blue Lotus here, that you do have like gummies and let's see,
Yep.
we've got dried flowers, gummies, the starter bundle, tincture, capsules. Um, do you find that one delivery method is a bit more accessible than another? I mean, out of
Yeah.
all these different products that you have here, like if somebody wanted to start, like, well, I just want to try it out, like, what kind of
Yeah, yeah.
recommend?
I mean, I think generally the capsules or gummies are the easiest way to go. It's all pre-measured. You just take one, two, three, or four, and that's like a good starting dose. It's subtle, and it also has diminishing returns. So, like if you take, let's say, if I took 5 gummies, 10 gummies isn't going to be twice as strong as 5 gummies. But like, and a lot of people feel one gummy. I think most people, the sweet spot is like 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4. But yeah, generally the easiest way. Now, that being said, like there's a big novelty to having the flowers, and the tea's really lovely, and they're cheap. They're super cheap. So like brewing a tea with the flowers is nice. You're just not getting the full alkaloid extraction. You can
Yeah.
also brew the tea with the flowers and then eat the flowers afterwards, though. That's the way to do it because the nuciferine is still in the flowers. It just hasn't been extracted into the water.
Yeah. I'm curious with the products that you sell, is there any interaction concerns that people would want to know about? Like, for example, like if you're taking Amanita, should you not be on something else? If you're going to be working with the Blue Lotus, is there something else that maybe um, is not wise to be working with at the same time? Or
Yeah. The big one, the big caveat for that is with Kana. So Kana is a South African succulent. It works as an SRI. So it's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. You think of SSRIs like Prozac or Zoloft. They're selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So Kana is not selective. So it doesn't hijack the system. It doesn't pull on the receptors. It releases serotonin in the brain. So it provides a potent mood lift, and people will use it for dancing and socializing, et cetera, et cetera. Kana, since it releases serotonin, it should not be used with anything else that releases serotonin because you can get serotonin syndrome if you have too much serotonin in the body. So Kana should not be mixed with SSRIs, any antidepressants, not with MDMA, anything like that, anything that releases serotonin. So that's the big one. Amanita as well. It's not really concerning until you take really high doses, but Amanita really shouldn't be mixed with alcohol. That's the big caveat there because they both hit GABA, and it'll increase. They'll each increase the other's effect. Yeah, and probably not a super high dose of benzos, but nobody should be taking benzos at a recreational level and taking Amanita. People will take Amanita to get off benzos. But you don't want to ever stack GABAergic substances either. Just why you're not supposed to drink when you're taking Xanax.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned serotonin syndrome. That's something that's come up on the podcast in various capacities, but I would just like to invite you to share a little bit about that now since you've just mentioned it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not something that I've ever experienced. And like I mentioned, it's really just the body has too much serotonin and can't clear it. I think it's from my understanding. And it can kill people. I've had a friend who went through it, and it was a really jarring and very, very uncomfortable experience for him. And thankfully he's alive. Most people, it has to be pretty extreme generally for it to kill you, but yeah, really, really unpleasant, too much serotonin. And yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know too much about it, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think that's enough just to remind people that, yeah, I've definitely discussed it on the podcast as potentially deadly, but more often than not, just extremely uncomfortable, where people's systems are just overloaded. And so it is something that people need to be aware about if they're working with any kind of mind altering substances where they're introducing these chemicals into their system, that some of them do not interact well, and that serotonin syndrome is just not an experience that anybody ever wants to have.
Yeah,
So it's good to be aware of what has contraindications with what so that you could
for sure.
avoid having an experience like that. Um, Prior to starting up this business, well, let me back up a second. You obviously have a lot of information around neurology and chemical interactions and the different receptor sites and systems that all of these things are hitting. Did you have an interest in this prior to starting this business, or was this also part of what you were learning through creating these products and figuring out what you wanted to offer to the public?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, when I was a teenager, I would spend my evenings researching different drugs and different like how they interact with the brain and the experiences that they elicit. And I would literally spend, 4 hours at least multiple nights a week, like researching for years. And so I've always been really interested in this stuff. I ended up going to school for physics. I didn't graduate. I dropped out and pursued a career in real estate after the '08 crisis hit. But so I've always been very science adept, and yeah, it just interests me. It piques my interest. And then really like real estate was so unfulfilling, and I mean, it was like a dopamine hit. Like that's what it was. It was just a dopamine hit, which was maybe fine for me in my 20s. But so the shift into this business was really a godsend in many regards, because it tickles my scientific interest, it tickles my entrepreneurial interest, and it tickles my strong desire to have a positive impact in the world.
Yeah. Um, so I'm just curious because you mentioned the real estate and physics that like in the little press material that came in my inbox, it says from physics and real estate to plant medicines, the unlikely journey.
Yeah, yeah. It is a weird journey for sure, for sure. It's been a strange life, but man, is it ever epic for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of the other things you've got here. So we've talked about the Blue Lotus, the Amanita, a little bit about the Kava, um, and just, we've got some Kana. So what's or no? We talked about Kana, but not
Yeah,
Kava.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then what would be the Kava?
So kava is a root that comes from the South Pacific, and it was used traditionally as essentially as something adjunct to alcohol, or they used it in placement of alcohol. They didn't have alcohol on those islands, but they would use it as we would use alcohol. So ceremoniously in tribal gatherings and social settings, and it's an inebriant. So you drink like you brew up a brew with it and drink out of these shells, and it causes an inebriation, almost similar to alcohol in some sense. It also hits GABA. It blocks sodium ion channels. It has a really unique body sensation to it. It's got a strong body high to it, and then it can make people kind of tipsy and loose and whatnot. But it also like it doesn't elicit the anger, or the stupidity that alcohol can elicit. It doesn't. There's no addiction aspect to it as well. So it's another unique GABAergic that doesn't have addictive properties to it. And yeah, it's pleasant. So we've seen in Florida they started building up kava bars, and I think
Yeah.
pretty much around the country at this point there are kava bars in nearly every city. Florida has a huge concentration of them. Like in St. Pete, for instance, there's like hundreds and hundreds of kava bars. but it's quickly becoming like an alternative to the alcohol scene where youth or not youth, but young adults or older adults can get together and and drink a drink that is somewhat inebriating and intoxicating and socialize and get to know each other all without that huge negative pitfall that alcohol can bring, which is really great. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people are starting to veer away from alcohol and having alternatives, and a place to gather in community is really wonderful. So yeah, Kava is interesting. It's pleasant and yeah, it's really, really great for like socializing or reducing anxiety. It also can be used for sleep. It doesn't work for me for sleep. It actually keeps me awake, but for a lot of people, it can put out.
Yeah. Is that, I'm curious, like with my issues with sleeps, some substances or things that I've taken, I find that I'm lying in bed and I'm just feeling high, and
Yeah.
that doesn't help me sleep. It's like, I
Yeah.
want to go to sleep. I don't want to feel high.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're getting from the kava, that you're just feeling too altered to sleep? I mean, it's a weird
Yeah.
paradox.
Yeah. It also, it like, so I have sleep issues too. I've had like this past weekend, I didn't sleep pretty much at all on Saturday. And then yesterday, I maybe got like 4 hours of sleep. So like I'm running on fumes right now, but so I'm familiar. It's not fun. But Kava, it seems to increase the speed of my thoughts a little bit.
Mm.
Which, you know, when you're thinking like crazy, like you just don't sleep. So yeah, that's me personally though. I think I'm kind of an anomaly in that sense, but
Yeah. I'm curious. Do you use Amanita to help with your sleep? And if so,
yeah,
how have you found that?
yeah. Every now and then, I don't like to use it too often these days. I kind of veered away from using it consistently, not because it was eliciting bad experiences or anything, but because I kind of felt like I'd gotten what I needed out of it, and I wanted to learn
Hmm.
how to address things without using substances, um, and how to live in my natural rhythm. Now that said, I do still use Amanita, but I use it in a different context. I take very large heroic doses with the moon cycle. That's generally what I do. So on a new moon and a full moon, oftentimes I'll skip months or skip weeks or whatever. But and I find for me, the new moon, like it's almost like a polar experience depending on the lunar cycle. But yeah, so I will take it for sleep every now and then. Like if I need it, if I haven't been sleeping well, and usually I'll sleep like 5, 6 hours a night. This weekend there was a lot of events going on, and it was very stimulating, and so I just didn't get much sleep. But yeah, I'll take it, you know, maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks if I really need to sleep. And it's the same deal with me. Like it doesn't knock me out, but it puts me, which is good. Like I don't want to be knocked out, you know. It puts me in that state where my mind can start drifting into the dream realm, and I can fall into sleep, which is a really big blessing. Not only that though, I also wake up feeling so refreshed after Amanita, and like so it seems to increase, you know, REM sleep and deep sleep quite a bit. A lot of like sleep aids, you know, you wake up and you're just drained and you're groggy. Like Amanita for me doesn't have that effect. I think I'm curious about your experience with waking up with it, but I think that's pretty consistent across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, my waking up, I mean, it's such a weird mix that like sometimes I can notice that, oh, I think I only really got a few hours last night, but I feel okay. And then other times it might seem like I slept through the night, but I'm waking up and just feeling like I haven't slept at all. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's really frustrating in that sense. And then I was using the Amanita regularly every night when for the first X number of months that I got it, because my sleep situation, it's difficult and it's challenging and I do need help. And then I felt like I was kind of getting diminishing returns on that. So then I decided like I'm just trying to keep it as my backup. And so now, like I was saying, I only use it maybe a couple times a week, and that it's awesome that it gets me over that hump to actually get some sleep. So usually those nights I actually will wake up feeling a bit better. I used it last night. I had a really tough time getting to sleep last night, and then I woke up way too early this morning. So I'm definitely in low gear myself
Yeah.
today. So I can't say that the Amanita, like, yeah, it got me up this morning and I was feeling great. But definitely a lot of nights when I am using it that I really do appreciate it, and that you just mentioned like when your thoughts hit that drift, it's like it's so sweet. I mean, for people who don't have sleep trouble, you don't know how much trouble it is, and how it just having that sensation of like, oh, my thoughts are drifting away, and I'm going to go to sleep, and just that shift in gears that comes, probably shifting brain waves at that point, and it's for people who just automatically, like I talk to a lot of people like, yeah, I put my head down on the pillow and I'm asleep in 5 minutes. It's like, oh my God, I'm so jealous. I wish I could do that, but I can't.
Right.
Like I don't have that capacity. And
Yeah.
so I find like if it's a plant or a mushroom that helps produce that experience, that I just find a great deal of value in it. And since, I mean, I've been very public about my sleep disorder, so I do get a lot of people who contact me about their own issues. And so that's where I am happy that I have something that I could say, look, here, this is non-addictive. It really does work. It's not going to knock you out, but I do think that it can help. And so it's nice to know that there's something out there like that. And so I've been very happy to recommend Amanita to people for that purpose.
Oh, love it. Have you ever tried the like brewing a tea with the caps or anything other than the calm extract?
No, I've just done the extract.
Cool. I'll send you some for sure.
Yeah.
If
So
you want to try, yeah.
yeah, oh, I'd love to. And actually, so that brings me, I wanted to ask you about taking, a heroic dose of Amanita, because that's something I've never done. I try and like, this is for sleep. So I'm saving this for sleep, and I'm not going to do it with anything else because I want to like protect, I'm very, very protective of my sleep. It's like I have to prioritize it. And, but I'm very curious, what is your experience of these new moon ceremonies that you're doing with Amanita? And I'm also really curious about how long it lasts. Because what I notice about the extract is that it gets me into there's that nice sleepy feeling, and oh, it feels so good. But if I don't fall asleep, then it seems like it wears off relatively quickly. And which is another thing that I like about it, because a lot of sleep aids, they will impact you in the morning when you wake up and you're still
Right.
groggy. And I don't
Yep.
experience that with the Amanita. But yeah, let's talk about a larger dose.
Yeah, yeah. So first I'll say that there seem to be like plateaus or different levels to the experience depending on dose. So like the microdose range, which is generally sub-perceptual, maybe slightly perceptual, is like a half gram to a gram. The low dose range where it starts getting, perceptible, and for most people, everybody's different, of course, but where people start noticing, noticeable relaxation and lowering of inhibitions and increased sociability. That's generally like 2 to 5 grams. A medium dose where all that stuff gets more intense is like 5 to 10 grams. A strong dose where people will start getting things like time glitches or involuntary muscle spasms,
Hmm.
which can be alarming for people. It's maybe not spasms, but jerks. Like your arm might jerk, and then like every 20 seconds you might jerk in another location in the body, which can be alarming for people. That can get scary if they don't know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
If I've grown to actually really enjoy it. For me, it feels like trauma being released in a sense, blocked energy in the body.
Yeah.
And then like there starts to become like a really intense dream-like quality to the experience. There's no visual hallucinations or anything like that. But and then in the heroic dose range, which is generally 15 grams plus, that it enters into a whole new realm. It's a whole different experience. And similar, of course, but it's just the intensity increases so much. And that can get delirious for people, which can also be potentially dangerous. People get stuck in time loops very frequently, which can also be very, very beneficial if utilized properly. But without a strong will, it can be scary for individuals. They one of the sayings in the Amanita community that I really love is, it's not a children's mushroom, which is so funny because it's in all the children's stories and books and TV shows. But really, when you get into like these really large doses, like it's experienced psilocybin, facilitators can have really hard times on a heroic dose of Amanita because it's so different, and it's a really, really powerful experience. So like I just did iboga last week for my first time, which was amazing, and like it's a hard experience for sure. But I can see in many ways how a heroic dose of amanita is harder than iboga, which is like, you know, generally thought of as like the most difficult plant medicine journey to go through. But yeah, so so all that said, like there's also this quality to it that you don't get with anything else, and that's for me is it connects me to God within, as opposed to like God external, you know, or like the cosmos or the universe or whatever. Like it connects me to like the true core of my being, that I really don't get with anything else. And that's like elicited some crazy transformations, some crazy downloads. And then another really, I always really liked using psychedelics because of how it alters the way that I think and I process information. And like, so if I'm able to pull different threads and go down different avenues of thought than I am normally, like I can extract some really cool info and like use that to transform my life and the world around me. Amanita does that in a way that nothing else does. So I'm able to go down very unique threads of thought that for me personally, like I can pull back some really, really powerful information. And then the real like pinnacle of the experience is generally when one is falling asleep after all this. So like in that waking like dream state, like half awake, half asleep on a heroic dose of amanita, most people will go through something akin in intensity to like a DMT experience, where like it's not visual. It's like, and it's so hard to put into words, but it's so far out of the realm of like our current, you know, the way that consciousness works that like it's a truly unique and profound experience to go through. I can't even begin to try and put it in words, you know, like one has to experience it. But yeah, so that's where like the real gold can come out of if one can synthesize it properly, you know. Yeah, that's the other kind. Like it's not a children's mushroom for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's the trajectory of the experience? How long is this lasting? And how long does it, like if you're eating, let's say you're eating the caps and you're doing these 15 grams, how long before you're starting to feel it? How long is it into the peak? How long are you there? And then what's the come down like?
Yeah. So first I'll say that instead of that when one is trying heroic doses or larger doses, they should always brew the tea, because when you brew the
Okay.
tea, you mix the desired amount in a pot of water and you add lemon juice and then you boil it for 30 minutes and strain and drink. So the heat and acidity decarbs more of the ibotenic acid into muscimol. So if you just mix it in the pot of water without lemon juice, you're only going to get a little bit of that decarb. But if you add the lemon juice, then you get, you know, more of a full decarb. And it's not a full decarb in any means. Like there's still ibotenic acid in there, but it converts a lot of it over. And ibotenic acid is a really important integral part of the experience as well. But yeah, so brew the tea, and then, you know, let's say somebody put in 15 grams and they drink the tea. Within 15, 20 minutes, they'll start to experience it. Within an hour, hour and a half, it'll be essentially full blown. And then the whole experience lasts for 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. However, a lot of people will fall asleep really quickly afterwards, because like the dream, I mentioned the waking dream state, which is really profound, but also the dreams are crazy. So a lot of people utilize it for that. And then there's a lot of healing and work that gets done in the dream state. And then the sleep is so restorative and powerful. But I personally like to start drinking earlier in the morning, earlier in the day and the evening, and ramp it up over the night. And then, and I'll stay up, you know, for 7 hours or so in the experience, maybe finish the last of my tea like 3 or 4 hours into it, so that I get the waking experience, and then I'll fall asleep, and the rest of the experience will be in my sleep state, and I'll wake up feeling amazing.
Yeah. Interesting. And is there any, purging, vomiting that happens with the amanita, which sometimes occurs for people with mushrooms or psilocybin mushrooms? Not everybody feels nausea with mushrooms, but definitely it happens. And really, I found like any psychedelics can produce various levels of purging. It doesn't necessarily need to be because it has emetic properties, but it's more of an energetic issue. But is that something that
Yeah.
people find with Amanita?
It's some people. Now, like if one were eating the raw caps in that quantity, like a lot of people would get sick like that. A lot of people would purge. But when brewing the tea and if using lemon juice and heat, it negates a lot of that for most people. Some people do though. Yeah, I don't. I never get any nausea. I might get some gas, like that happens. But yeah, I don't get nauseous. Some people do, but it seems more often than not that people do not, as long as they brew the tea properly. Yeah. Now, all this being said, again, like I don't recommend anybody, and definitely don't start off with a heroic dose. Like if anybody's listening, they're like, I want to try that. Like, no, 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 no. Start low. Start with the low dose. Work your way up to that. You might find that it's not for everybody. And the people that it is for, and in the heroic doses, I should say, like in the low medium doses, most everybody really likes it. The worst thing we ever hear is like, I didn't feel it. We never hear like that was a horrible experience. I don't ever want to do that again. It's just like I didn't feel it, and then it's like, well, your physiology is a little different. Like you probably need a little bit more. Which and it also has a unique dose response curve, meaning like there's a whole array of different reactions to it. So like one person's 1 gram might be equivalent to the person next to them's 5 grams. So like the dosing table that I gave earlier is a general table, but like some people might say like, I tried 3 grams in a tea. It's supposed to be a low dose, but I didn't feel anything. And like, it's like when you go to a doctor and get prescribed medication, like they start you low and then they build you up, and not everybody's going to land at the same dosage. And yeah, so everybody keep that in mind.
Yeah. So something I'm just curious about, kind of throughout the conversation here, that we kind of have perhaps even different hats that you're wearing, or different ways of addressing and approaching it, and how I'm asking these questions and how you're answering, in the sense that we've got like neurological or biophysical responses, like what does this compound do within the body, and then we have what's the experience like in terms of, do you feel euphoric, do you feel sleepy, do you feel dreamy, and then there's the more metaphysics where you've mentioned like, well, this is the one that helps you make connections or get out of a time loop or something like that. Do you feel like you wear different hats and you approach it differently, or is it all part of one package? And especially I'm curious in terms of like interfacing with customers or with the client base. Is there one that you like to put forward first, or just what's your approach with that?
That's a really interesting question. I think it is in essence one hat, although also I will for sure cater to the audience a little bit, depending on like what seams will land. Like not everybody's open to the spiritual stuff, like, and then those metaphysical concepts. And although I'll always pepper them in for sure, always, but I won't expand on them in great detail if it doesn't feel like it's the right audience for it. On the website, we are much more practical and science based, although we do pepper that stuff in. But yeah, that's an interesting question. It really is kind of just like, it's just me, so it's just one hat, but yeah, I'll cater a little bit for sure, depending on the audience.
Yeah. And then the website itself and the company name, MN Nice, I'm assuming that's Minnesota?
Yeah. And actually, and probably by the time this comes out, so I just moved myself and the business down to Los Angeles. So we're here in LA now, which has been, a long time in the works. And with that, so like M and Nice was a CBD company in Minnesota originally, right? It was never intended to be a global brand. That wasn't the goal. But that's what it's become. So we've been wanting to change the name for a long time, and it was not, and it was always like, if it's not an absolute yes, then it's a no, and like, so we had all these ideas for names that would come up, and it was never, oh, that's the one, so it was always no. And then finally, the day that I made the decision to move down here, the name came to me that night. And the name it's Amentara, which has a huge, long, crazy backstory to it. And I don't think we have time for me to go on a 20-minute monologue about that backstory, but it's a really beautiful one. But so we're in the process of rebranding everything entirely. And that will be the website currently will just redirect to that website. So anybody can still type in MN Nice and they'll find it and get redirected. But yeah, that should be released in the next month or two, hopefully, early November, I think is kind of the goal. But yeah, Emma Nice, Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals has been the company for 5 years, and we're just gearing up to birth into a new structure.
All right. Well, we'll see where that's at by the time this is actually released. It'll be a few weeks before this interview comes out publicly. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you about. I don't know if I've ever interviewed anyone from Minnesota before here on the podcast. So I was just kind of curious if you have anything to share about what the culture is like around like these plant medicines in Minnesota. Yeah, anything that you want to share kind of more at the sociological level.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm from the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul area. There's not a huge psychedelic community there or a huge spiritual community there. It's very Midwestern. It's a really lovely area. Like there's that Minnesota Nice is a phrase in Minnesota, and honestly, like in some sense, it's more Minnesota passive aggressive, but people are very nice. People are very nice. And yeah, it was it's a lovely place. It was a lovely place to grow up. I have, tons of really, really close friends and obviously family out there. There was also time to move and move to a bigger, a place that was more suited for what we're doing. And for me personally, like I didn't have a spiritual community out there at all. Like I didn't have people that I could communicate with about, the things that make me tick and the things that I'm really interested in. A couple, but like not a community of them. And so yeah, hence moving on here. But we have like all the lakes. The nature is beautiful. So there's a lot of water sports, and there's forests and trees. Which I'm a tree guy. So like yeah, I love the forest. Yeah, beautiful nature, and yeah, really really wonderful people for sure. Minnesota's cool.
All right. And any culture shock moving to LA?
I've been coming here. I was kind of living here maybe like a third of my time, and for the past couple years. So I'm pretty assimilated and have a big community that I'm plugged into, and lots of really, really incredible people. So I knew what I was getting into. It's a change yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I knew what I was getting into. Yeah. And it's so nice, and especially in a big city when you come and you already have community and you already have people that love you and care about you. So I just really just plugged right in, and I'm absolutely happier than I've ever been in my entire life, and the business is doing great. And yeah, it is a big move that was very intense as far as the workload and getting everything set up. But yeah, it's been well worth it.
All right. Well, we'll just remind the listener that's MN-Nice-Ethnobotanicals going to be renamed. What do you say? What was it?
Amentara. Yeah.
Amentara. Okay. Yeah. So almost like Amanita, but not. Sounds like a little Egyptian Buddhist combination. I know you've got a story there, so maybe you can share the story with me another time. But Christian, thanks for being on the show today and sharing all this information about these various ethnobotanicals and kind of diving into the Amanita topic, which obviously I'm really interested in because for all the reasons that we have discussed. But I appreciate your perspective and being able to speak from experience, and also having gone through your own withdrawal and addiction and healing. It's always nice to hear how people are supporting themselves by using these various plants and fungi to make a better life for themselves, and then share that with others.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, opening up your platform to the mushroom and to me. So yeah, we appreciate you, and it was a good talk.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Christian.